Deep inside our forest lies a wondrous place of peace and solitude, a remote sanctuary filled with mystery and intrigue, a quiet shelter far removed from the maddening sounds of today's world. Home to fascinating plants, amazing animals, and other dazzling natural wonders. A special site that's been centuries in the making. Welcome to this remarkable spot on Earth. We're in a Pennsylvania old-growth forest. If you've never been fortunate to experience an old-growth forest, it's difficult to describe its sheer wonder. Here lie some of the world's oldest and largest trees, massive hemlocks, white pines, and beeches, spectacular monuments to nature that date back to the early 1500s, long before Pennsylvania or even our nation was founded. The fact that any old-growth stands still remain today is truly amazing, especially when you consider how our forests were logged 100 years ago. But that wasn't always the case. The first inhabitants of Pennsylvania embraced its natural beauty. The lush forests were teeming with wild game. Clear rivers overflowed with an abundance of shad. Majestic mountains provided protection, and mountain laurel filled the air with the sweet smells of spring. The Native Americans believed that the earth was a sacred, living entity and cleared little of the land. They made practical use of trees for food, medicine, canoes, and other products necessary for daily life. During the 1600s, the first European settlers to America were astounded by the vastness of Pennsylvania's forests, which seemed endless. William Penn, the founder of our Commonwealth, was so impressed that he called this region Penn's Woods. But as the population grew, extensive felling and clearing of forests were needed to make way for new towns and villages. It was the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s that ultimately led to the end of most of Pennsylvania's old-growth forests. They were cleared for charcoal and iron production and farming. The state soon became known as America's leader in timber production, providing a nation with wood for construction. As our forests were being cut, citizens put no effort into the regeneration of trees. Back then, the philosophy was, we'd never run out. That was far from true. Nearly every acre of Penn's Woods was cleared. Little was spared. The effect on our landscape was horrendous, as Pennsylvania changed from a territory bursting with magnificent forests to largely treeless hillsides and valleys. And all that remained of the vast old-growth forests were isolated remnants, a tenuous link to the past. Thankfully, Pennsylvania was a leader in the early conservation movement in this country. In 1895, the Bureau of Forestry was formed to protect the health and vitality of the Commonwealth's forests. Its early efforts focused on reforesting many of the cut-over areas with trees that became second-growth stands, trees that are now about 100 years old. Our forest coverage statewide has rebounded from a mere 10% 100 years ago to 60% today. The Pennsylvania Wild Resource Conservation Fund expands on the Commonwealth's commitment to learn more about the value of this unique ecosystem.
These old growth areas should be protected because these trees that are around us right now represent the seed population of forest regeneration. Each one of these trees will drop 1,000 seeds and they'll fall to earth and become our next regeneration of our forest. But also, when you look at this whole ecosystem, it is alive and well with maybe potentially 5 times the amount of species that are anywhere in other ecosystems of its kind. amphibians, spiders, and ultimately the birds that feed on these spiders. So this is a rich area biologically to be protected for future generations.
So what exactly is an old-growth forest? How is it described? And why is it so different from other forest types? Although the term is loosely defined, old growth is basically a unique forest ecosystem containing old trees, some that have existed since pre-settlement times. Forests usually develop in stages, starting with a meadow, an unused farmer's field, or a young forest, then advancing into first and second generation forests. Each stage is accompanied by specific species of trees and understory plants. If the conditions are favorable, forests eventually reach a climax or a late stage of development and ultimately achieve old-growth status. We're talking centuries here, trees that are hundreds of years old. But this isn't the end of the process. Nature is constantly changing our forests. They never remain the same. As you may already know, you can determine a tree's age by counting its rings. Since this usually isn't possible unless the tree is cut or blown down, how else can you identify old growth? In some instances, size is one of the more notable characteristics. Their majesty is what draws scientists like Dr. Gordon Kirkland and his students to learn more about these gentle giants.
The trees in old-growth forest are simply magnificent. We spend time in the woods hunting and going after mushrooms and birding and whatever, and our vision of forest is from second and third and fourth growth forest. And if you get into a virgin old-growth forest, it's like being in nature's cathedral. The trees are 2, 3, 4, 5 times as big as what you find in most of the forests that we're used to dealing with. They're 120 feet tall. They have trunks that are 3 and 4 feet in diameter, just huge trees. Boy, that's a mammoth tree. Melissa, if you want to get around on the other side, I'll pass this over. Can you reach it? Yeah. .7. That's a truly impressive tree. That's probably 250 years old anyway. What a patriarch. Seen a lot of history.
But size is only one characteristic. Old-growth trees may be standing live, standing dead as snags, or on the ground as fallen logs covered by moss. Other features include gaps in the canopy and patchy spots within the system, caused by blown-down trees from windstorms. Plus, there's usually an age difference among the ancient trees in the stand, soil covered with a layer of rich organic material, pit and mounds topographic relief, and signs that the forest is relatively free of human intervention. However, these traits are far from universal. Some stands may possess all of them, while others only a few. It depends on the forest type, local climate, and disturbance history. Hemlock, our official state tree, and white pine are the most prevalent old-growth species in the Commonwealth. Plus, there are black gum, tulip poplar, beech, and red pine remaining. By now you may be wondering, where in Pennsylvania are we? If so many forests were cleared, what's left? Where are these remnants that were spared from destruction? A majority of our old-growth stands are at locations that were inaccessible to loggers in the 1800s. Areas with steep mountain slopes and deep boulder-strewn ravines. One small old-growth area stood on a disputed property line between two logging companies. The opposing firms couldn't settle their argument in court, so the tract remained uncut, eventually protected by the Bureau of Forestry. The early stewardship of that forest now extends to all old-growth sites across the state. In Pennsylvania, we have 61 designated natural areas where the habitats are preserved and human intervention is kept to a minimum. Old-growth forests exist in 18 of them, as small, relatively isolated patches. Their acreage represents far less than 0.1% of the state's total landscape. Our largest tract is in the Northwest at the Allegheny National Forest, a nature lover's paradise. It's home to the Tionesta Natural Area, where 4,000 acres of old-growth hemlock beech prevail. Smaller, but just as spectacular, is a place called Heart's Content. Here you can spend quiet time among the 450-year-old virgin stands of white pine. Tionesta and Heart's Content represent the only uncut vestiges of a forest that once covered 6 million acres in a portion of Pennsylvania and New York called the Allegheny Plateau. The federal government purchased the land in 1936 to preserve these relics of the past. Besides the Allegheny National Tract, some state forests and parks house old-growth stands. Most notable is Cook Forest State Park, often called the Black Forest of Pennsylvania. Here you can walk through the largest remaining virgin white pine forest in the East. The territory was spared from logging in the 1920s by an early group of naturalists who wanted to preserve forests for the enjoyment of future generations. They promoted the woods as a reservoir of natural diversity, an incubator of human spirituality. Cook Forest has since been deemed a National Natural Landmark by the U.S. Park Service. Rothrock State Forest contains the glorious Alan Seeger Natural Area, named in honor of the young American poet who lost his life in World War I. It's home to immense black gum and tulip poplar, including this 450-year-old gem. Their majesty is enhanced each summer by the stunning beauty of blooming rhododendrons. At Bald Eagle State Forest, the Snyder-Middleswarth Natural Area offers visitors a glimpse of the tallest trees in the state, some measuring over 150 feet. The Hemlocks Natural Area at Tuscarora State Forest boasts 120 acres of virgin timber, nestled in a rich, narrow ravine. The pairing of giant woods with towering waterfalls makes Ricketts Glen State Park a breathtaking sight for outdoor enthusiasts. Few states in the U.S. can match Pennsylvania's old-growth forest resources. Our 10,000 acres is remarkably large compared to neighboring states. It's among the most extensive in the East.
But still, our acreage is far less than it once was, and much less than what exists in the western United States, although extensive logging has greatly reduced their old-growth forests as well.
So why should we care about these age-old forests? What's their value to you and me? Dr. Kirkland believes their worth is priceless.
These are irreplaceable forests that represent part of our heritage, and they're unique and they can never be replaced. The other area you can look at them in terms of their importance is their scientific importance. They're unique natural laboratories.
Old-growth forests show us how nature works and deserve protection for their scientific, ecological, and aesthetic qualities. Scientifically, their merit stems from the fact that they've been studied so very little. They're among the more pristine places remaining on Earth. Do these 300 and 400-year-old relics function the same way as our younger second-growth forests do? Or are there fundamental differences? These mysteries compel scientists to uncover their well-kept secrets. The answers may provide a baseline of measurement against today's forests. Ecologically, old growth challenges us with diversity as we immerse ourselves in moss, focus on ferns, and stumble over stumps. Old growth makes it beautifully clear that a healthy forest is much more than just trees. It's also the hundreds of plants and animals that dwell here, few found anywhere else on Earth. Some species are so dependent on this rich habitat that their sheer existence hinges on it. Although no bird species is totally dependent on our old growth, many favor it. Songbirds like the Blackburnian warbler and magnolia warbler. They are 40 times greater in old-growth forests than in second growth. One of the most intriguing but least appreciated inhabitants are lichens. Lichens are not plants. They are not even a single organism. Lichens are a group of fungi, algae, and bacteria that live together in symbiosis, which means they benefit from one another's company. Botanist Bob Hill considers lichens a major player in old-growth systems.
Lichens are very important for a number of reasons. They are biomonitors, that is to say they help us to monitor the changes in the environment. They're biological indicators of pollutants and other products in the environment. In an area like this, they're especially important because they help us to establish baseline information so we can see the changes that are happening as we impact the landscape outside of areas like this. So they have many, many functions. They're very vital.
Old growth also offers an aesthetic or spiritual value. Everywhere you turn, scenic masterpieces overwhelm your senses. You're uplifted by spectacular colors, while taking in piney aromas, startled by the sudden quiet amidst shafts of light streaking to the forest floor. And you're dazed by the power of the forest to slow you down, to make time stand still. No matter the season, old-growth forests free your spirit, clear your mind, and raise your expectations. Because beyond every turn, there's another surprise. As we begin the 21st century, Pennsylvania's few surviving stands of old growth are being studied by numerous scientists and their students. Despite efforts to save them, these ever-changing woods face natural disturbances and human disruptions that may jeopardize their survival. Many of our forests are in decline simply because the trees are old, they've surpassed their average lifespan. Like the 300-year-old eastern white pines in Cook Forest, they started to decline 150 years ago. Fire and weather disturbances like lightning and ice storms create serious losses. Tornadoes regularly swirl through the Allegheny Plateau. One of the most catastrophic storms occurred in 1985, flattening about 1,000 acres of old-growth forest. Disease is another source of destruction. The mighty American chestnut used to be a prominent tree species, but an exotic fungus introduced in the 1920s triggered a massive loss that eliminated the chestnut as a dominant tree in Pennsylvania. And our trees are not immune to the damage caused by insect pest invasions. Gypsy moths attack oak, and inchworms feed on a variety of hardwoods. Some animals wreak havoc on old-growth trees with their eating habits. Porcupines enjoy tree bark, twigs, and leaves. Unfortunately, this girdling disrupts the flow of nutrients down the tree and causes its eventual death. And the white-tailed deer is especially menacing. By the 1930s, deer browsing had nearly annihilated eastern hemlock and hobblebush from the understory of Tionesta's old-growth forest. Today, an inflated deer population continues to damage eastern hemlocks. Their browsing habits severely limit a forest's ability to regenerate. Despite efforts to reduce damage by fencing out deer, nothing is totally effective when the deer are really hungry. Besides many natural disturbances, human disruption can rob a forest of its primeval character. Nowhere is this more evident than in the northwest corner of the state, the birthplace of the American petroleum industry. The discovery of oil in the 1800s in Titusville led to extensive drilling for the black gold in the neighboring Tionesta Natural Area. In the late 1980s, the mineral rights under the Tionesta area were purchased by the Allegheny National Forest to ensure the protection of the old-growth forest.
Human intervention is also responsible for eroding the ecological integrity of our forests, such as in Cook Forest. Back in the mid-1900s, the conventional wisdom was that fallen logs should be removed to protect the remaining trees from insects and disease. But those efforts proved more harmful than beneficial.
And air and water pollution have taken their toll on old growth by altering ecosystem processes. There is some good news, however. Logging of ancient trees, one of our most damaging practices, is now in check thanks to the far-sighted efforts of early conservationists and government agencies like the Bureau of Forestry. Most of Pennsylvania's old-growth sites are protected by one or more public management agencies. Forest managers are being challenged to expedite their efforts to save these ancient wonders. Never before have so many demands been placed on our forest resources. Today, more and more people head for the great outdoors to listen to songbirds, discover brilliant wildflowers, and take in other amazing natural wonders. Our old-growth forests have contributed much to Pennsylvania's burgeoning ecotourism industry. Visitors can experience firsthand the timelessness that comes from walking amidst these grand, tall towers, witnesses to sites that have survived human touch for hundreds of years. As the recreational demands on old-growth forest increase, so do the chances for damage from overuse. But as often as humans become part of the problem, they can also emerge with solutions. Spending time in these ancient woods can transform even casual visitors into the forest's staunchest protectors.
So what does the future hold for these priceless ecosystems? What is being done to preserve Pennsylvania's forgotten giants?
Scientists like Dr. Kirkland are cautious of their fate.
In this country, at least we have an appreciation for old growth forest, and we've taken steps in various areas to try to preserve old growth. Now the question is, can we preserve old growth forest in acreages that are sufficient so they function as real old growth forest? What's left is so small an extent that we can't afford to lose any more.
Preserving our existing old growth is only a small part of the answer. We must allocate forest land today that will move on to later stages of ecological succession. Even the smallest old growth vestige retained is a triumph, for it may become the seed from which a renewed forest spreads. Frank Feldbaum believes now is the time to plan for future old growth.
If people really want to look at this and get involved with further protection, we should be looking at planning to save our 100-year-old trees today so there'll be 500-year-old trees 400 years from now. And that's a very important concept. And again, that's a legacy that we will leave to future generations.
All too often, the hectic pace of life's daily grind overwhelms our senses. Pennsylvania's old-growth forests teach us to stop and reflect, to celebrate the spectacular wonders found in Penn's woods. For these treasures are not simply a gauge of the past, but a promise of the future that can inspire our hopes for ages to come.